And there's also known to be an undershirt with an Iranian flag.
You know, in my line of work, being right is almost never rewarding. Almost never. There's a few times where I'm like, oh, that's kind of satisfying. But almost never do I have a moment where I think to myself, oh, what I talk about on a daily basis is happening in real life. No. When I talk about Islam and its invasion of not just the West in general, but more specifically the United States, and I caution anybody I can, I'm crying out in the wilderness for anybody who may be able to hear me. I don't love the end result of then seeing the fullest expression of exactly what I've been crying out about. I do not enjoy that. You know, right now I'm in the book of Jeremiah, and that man was weeping and wailing his entire life since he was a young boy, when God decided that for some reason, you know, this weeping and wailing man needed to be his messenger and go out there and cry out to the people that if they did not turn from their wicked ways, they would, not may, would feel the retribution. They would not go unpunished, unchastised. And then it happened. After decades of warning after warning after warning, and then it happens. And even though he is spared of the sword, of the pestilence, that doesn't make it any better. And so the most recent news has been that of it's like another mass shooting, right? Now, when I was growing up, I used to believe that all of these were at the hands of right-wing extremists, more specifically white people, right? That is what the media would push. And sure, there have been cases where that has been the truth, but in most cases, especially most recently, it has either been those of the T community, i.e. not just the alphabet, L's, the G's, the B's, the T's, the Q's, but just the T's. For some reason, that specific group has been responsible for a multitude, or at least linked to a multitude of these public executions. And this one, though it is different, is not really different in the grander scheme, right? Because here we have a jihadist, a Muslim man who likely did what he did, the massacring of at least 2 people. I believe it might be more at this point. Massacring at least 2 to 3 people and injuring multitudes more, all because his book told him to do so. The same book which they happen to find on his person. Now, I'm going to play out the official reporting on this so we can all get updated. I made sure to, kind of hold off on this story until we got together, since it is really fresh news. So, we can both learn as far as what details they have thus far. So here we go.
I have some breaking news. I want to bring this in now. I've been telling everybody about the Austin mass shooter, and now we have a picture. And this is what we're finding out. Per multiple federal law enforcement sources to our own Bill Malhusian, the Austin mass shooter is a 53-year-old naturalized U.S. citizen who was born in Senegal and was living in Pflugerville, Texas. Material recovered from his person and inside the vehicle give possible indications of a nexus to terrorism, as the FBI announced earlier today. And remember what we said he had in his possession and was also wearing. The shooter was wearing clothing that said Allah on it. His sweater said property of Allah. And there's also known to be an undershirt with an Iranian flag and other materials inside. And remember what...
Now, I'm going to go ahead and meet the propaganda right where it starts. I can already see it right now. False flag, false flag, false flag. That's going to be the story. Now, do I know for certain that this is 100% not a false flag, that this is not our government looking to justify their actions in Iran? Do I know that for a fact? Absolutely not. However, what I do know for a fact is that the likelihood of this guy just simply being a Muslim extremist or an Islamic extremist is more probable than not. It's more probable than not. Yeah. When you have an ideology that has produced more terrorism per capita than any other ideology combined in world history, it is likely. Now, of course, we could look at communism, but see, communism acts in different ways. Communism is very well the most dangerous ideology as far as lives taken, numbers in total, perhaps. But I would say that it is definitely getting a run for its money from Islam, 1,000%. However, the false flag narrative is going to come in as a way to undermine the dangers of the Islamification of the United States. And it's interesting because there is now the re-emerging and virality of a video that I brought up, might be a couple months ago, which was talking about how in Texas specifically, there have been more than 48 mosques built in 24 months. And it is well over that, right? They're saying there are hundreds of them that have been built in the last couple of decades, which is, it's not just concerning. It is an actual problem. It's an issue. For some odd reason, an ideology that is responsible for the largest single day attack, I think, in American history, is the same ideology that is being allowed to plant itself in what used to be a hub of Americana in Texas, right? We're not just talking about Austin where this happened. We're talking about Dallas, the Fort Worth area, which used to be red country through and through. Maybe I'm missing something, but the Dallas that I knew, like Dallas was the first city I actually came to when I moved to the United States at around 10 years old, legally, by the way, and was also naturalized. Unfortunately, this dude right here, he might stop the whole green card process because of this one event. But yeah, I just have to make that clear. There are going to be those who will push the narrative, and they've already drawn the conclusion, and they will leave no room for any other alternative, that perhaps this was somebody who may even have felt some type of way when he saw his, big poppy up there, sugar daddy, get turned into a literal pile of sugar, or more specifically dust, right? Bye-bye Khomeini. Sorry, Khomeini was the one before him. This is Khomeini, whatever. We don't necessarily got to put any respect on his name because he did not deserve it. He did not live to have respect placed upon his life nor his death. Good riddance is what we say. As it reads in Proverbs, when the wicked perish, the people rejoice. Simple as that. There's a reason why 90 million Iranians are currently celebrating while like 10 of them are crying. And likely some of them, definitely one of them, felt some type of way to the point where he would go out and massacre a bunch of quote unquote infidels, non-believers. So let's go ahead and get back into this one. Let's see what else we got here.
Representative Michael McCall of Texas just told me last hour, he said, Harris, in my own backyard, just last night, we had an event that possibly could have been terror inspired right here in Austin, Texas. This is what he was talking about. Brett, I was reminding Americans this is not a new place for us to be in terms of keeping our heads on a swivel. But it bears repeating. We've lost Americans in the fight on the battlefield, and protecting the homeland now is also something that we must be on the alert. Now, authorities have not tied this Austin situation to what's happening in the Middle East as terror related to that, but they are investigating it just moments ago, confirming as a possible terror attack. Your reaction?
My reaction is that it is a terror attack. Just in case you were wondering. It's exactly what it is. Let's continue.
Well, we have to remain vigilant. I mean, Khamenei, he was a religious figure. We don't know if this attack was associated, but it very well may be. But the fact is, this isn't a representation of how most people from that region feel. The Iranian people, they fear their own rulers more than our own military. They hate, their own oppressive rulers than anyone else. And we may see more attacks like this. We have to be vigilant. There are proxy groups everywhere that are looking for ways to harm Americans and hurt Americans. And but the fact of the matter is, overall, there are images right now showing most Iranians and most Shias celebrating today, not because of war, but because they hate their own rulers more than anyone else. That's a sign that we're striking, not just at their military, we're striking at the legitimacy of a brutal regime. The Iranian people want better relationships with the West. They have the potential to be our biggest ally. I think it's important we collectively separate the terrorist regime from that of the majority Iranian people. These people have spent decades, trying to hurt us. And so the fact is, again, we just need to remain vigilant in the wake of these strikes.
Look, I don't want to make too much out of this because the FBI and federal authorities have to do their jobs and tell us what the facts are with this particular case. But you are looking at on your screen right now the man that they suspect to be the Austin, Texas shooter. And he is 53 years old. And I don't know if you had seen this as well. There were all sorts of descriptions about age, but now we know some specificity. He's 53-year-old American citizen, naturalized, originally from Senegal. He is wearing a sweater, and you can see here a sweater that says "Property of Allah" with an undershirt and the Iranian flag.
And he also happened to have a Quran in his car. You literally cannot you technically could make this up. It would be the perfect story. So again, there are going to be obvious pushes into the world of it has to be a false flag. For me, no. If you went ahead and asked the people of Iran whether or not jihadist terror was a real thing, was a problem, is a problem, they will be the first ones to tell you yes. If you were to ask the millions of Israelis who had to bunker up in the last 48 hours, whether or not jihadism is an issue and whether or not it produces terror, you would not have to go far to get an answer. I want y'all to look up the second intifada. Look up the first, but also look up the second. What was it actually? What is this intifada that these delusional, useful idiots are calling for on college campuses? What's that about? Is it maybe hundreds of self-bombing individuals waltzing out of the West Bank into greater Israel and blowing themselves up in the midst of innocent people? Is that the intifada? Is that a call to Islam? Jihad, the holy war? Or is that just a coincidence that hundreds of these events happened? They say by 2001, I believe it was maybe May or March 2001, there were 138 of these specific bombings in a fractal of time. October 7th. Do you think that was motivated by some happenstance, coincidental, or perhaps this is the narrative, resistance of occupied peoples? Or was it proxy terror groups, or more specifically, a terror group was then joined by Hezbollah, who is also a proxy of the current dictatorial, totalitarian, jihadist Ayatollah regime, who was actively funding as well as training these people up. So if that's the case, then why is it hard for us to believe what's right in front of us? Why are we still in denial? Why do we still need to Alex Jones-ize everything around us? Not everything is the cover story. Sometimes. And I know it's hard to believe because we have been lied to a multitude of times about a multitude of things. And we must forever remain vigilant, literally, or like in the physical as well as psychologically. But why is it? Why is it that it can't just be the story? It is likely that Charlie Kirk was assassinated by a radical leftist because radical leftists wanted Charlie Kirk dead more than any other group Second on that list might have been jihadist, right? Sorry to tell y'all, but Israel wasn't even top 10. They actually would rather have had the guy around because he was a powerful advocate for Israel. So sorry about that, but these are the facts. The people who had him on a hit list, number one on that list, were leftists who felt triggered by what he was saying and believed that he was a fascist and a racist who needed to be eliminated. So, when you have an ideology that pushes the idea that non-believers, infidels, need to be eradicated from the face of the earth if they do not submit, and then you have somebody who goes out and does this to a group of innocent people, and I say innocent because they were innocent. These were not people who provoked this man to this action or this terror attack. These were people who were simply going about their day. Americans, mind you. Now, America used to be the sort of nation that would respond to this sort of thing with 100% certainty. There was no question about what we needed to do. We're closing down borders. We're revoking visas. We're making sure that there are real life bans on certain people making their way into our country. That's the certainty I'm talking about. Not going out there and caging up people who hold the same ideology and putting them. No. But those who show themselves to be resistant, those who show themselves to be pro, quote unquote, revolution against the United States, the likes of an Ilhan Omar, Tlaib, they will be sent away by yesterday. They will be back home, wherever they came from, wherever you once came from, Somalia, quote unquote, Palestine, whatever it is that you are representing, you're sent back there. We don't want you here. You have no business here. That's the sort of America that we used to live in. And I pray to God, because right now we have been given a real leader. God alone could have chose this man. We will likely get the necessary response. And thankfully, we have a man like Marco Rubio sitting in a very important seat where he can make decisions like this. Columbia University, you want to egg on terror endorsers, protests on behalf of these terror acts? Okay. How about we revoke every single one of your visas and we pull all the money out of your institutions? How about that? Pete Hegseth. Yeah, we're not going to be recruiting from any of these schools. Yale, Columbia, Harvard, you have become harbors of terror ideology. So at the top down, we need executive action. That's what needs to be done. If you want an answer, sometimes you have, maybe somebody who is on Capitol Hill that is tuning into this channel every now and then. They like to drive incognito sometimes. My message to you is you need to do something real about this because they're here. They're already here. Texas, they're already there. We thought it was just the Mamdanification of New York. If you want a false flag or if you want a distraction, right? Because everything's a distraction from the files. If you want a real distraction, it might be Mamdani right now. Even though you need to be looking at the Mamdani situation. You need to be looking at New York, but you're not looking at Texas. Does anybody know what's going on in Wyoming? In Arkansas? Any idea? They might be building communities out there right now. Because in Texas, they already bought up acres of land and they're building their own little insulated towns. I'm telling y'all right now, I've reported on these things now a multitude of times. This is a subject I talk about almost on a daily basis. And there are others who are talking about this on a daily basis, guys who have been warning you from across the pond like Tommy Robinson for decades now. Guys like Raymond Ibrahim who have been talking about this and studying and trying to warn folks forever now. Brigitte trying to warn y'all for decades at this point. Douglas Murray trying to warn y'all for decades at this point. And who's willing to listen? Who's willing to hear the truth for what it is and to do what is necessary about it? You need to say no. And you've got people like this devious psyop in Nick Fuentes telling our young folks not to vote in the primary, not to vote in the midterms, not to vote at all, or to vote for Democrats as quote unquote conservatives because he's mad about his sugar daddy over there getting blown into literal smithereens. He's sad about his ash daddy over there. Used to be sugar daddy, now he's just ash daddy. He's telling our kids to go out there and vote for the Democratic Party who has allowed these cells into our country. And I've spent enough time outside of the States, in and around Europe, to know that this is real, folks. You're going to wake up one day and you're going to look outside and you will not recognize your town. You're not going to recognize your city. You're not going to recognize your state. You're going to walk around and look for Americans and you will not find them. You may go 2-3 days. I have been in situations where I have been walking around town for 2 to 3 days and I have not found more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 actual Europeans in a European country. Ain't that crazy? Ain't that something? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was the Netherlands. I thought this was Belgium. I thought this was France. What happened to the French? What happened to the... Am I missing something here? Don't let it happen. In America, there's a beautiful thing. And it's called, well, it's not technically called this, but this is the concept. We have a concept of the freedom of each state or certain liberties that are given to a state. Now, of course, federal law is federal law, right? Everybody has to fall under that. But you have state rights. So you have laws that are going to be changed at a state level and then at a province level, really county level, at a city level, right? Your own little neighborhood probably has its own little council and things of that nature. You have changes that can be affected grassroots, and those are the ones we oftentimes miss. Those are the ones which are oftentimes, neglected, and I'm as guilty as anybody else. I always thought that, well, none of this mattered. Who cares anyway? It's not going to mean anything. No, it does mean it. It not only means something, it means everything. Ask folks in Virginia what happened, what is happening to them right now. Folks are paying $1,300 for one person living in their own little apartment just for the light bill. Just for the gas, $1,300. And that is a direct result of politics. Yes, this is a soapbox moment because it's necessary. Now you're seeing what I've been talking about. It's real, folks. And I know it's not comfortable. We don't like to see these things. We don't, right? Honestly, we don't. I don't. Nobody does. But you also have to be real about what is going on around you. Because if you don't, then they will continue to push this. You know why Ilhan was so upset? Why she was screaming like a crying banshee up there? You know why? Because she's mad that she can't bring more of these cells into our country. That's why she's upset. Why she was crying when her fellow Somalians, who back home really would have despised her and her family, because it turns out that her father was actually involved in a Somalian genocide, one of the largest in their history. I won't tell you that part, huh? How they had to sneak over here to America and create a whole new identity for themselves. She would have been despised, but she knows how to pander. She knows how to play the political game, and she's done exactly that. And she has brought in her people in order to, first and foremost, gain power, because those people will be the ones voting her into power, and then for her to assert herself when she's in a power position. Now she can get other people in position. And these communists, folks, these communists need nothing but a few, right? I recently finished The Devil and Karl Marx. They don't need but 5, 10 out of every 100 communists. Just 5 to 10 communists in a group of 100 people, and they can control the entire group. They are that good at organizing. It's not because they're that intelligent. They just know how to come together and make something happen. And we have to get that same frame of mind. We have to start being that active as opposed to passive. especially as folks who are believers, we've had this notion that, well, we don't get involved in politics. We don't get involved in government. This is history and this is eschatology, or this is history and this is prophecy, right? This is economics and this is politics. This is social. This is psychological. There's everything within the Word of God. God is a God of politics, or more specifically of governance. And though it is not our job to bring in the perfect government, we can't do it. Only He can. And He will. And He will sooner than later. Trust me on that. But we still have a responsibility for what we did. Did we let our country fully give over to these demonic entities and powers when we could have done something about it, at the very least in our own households? Because if you don't think this thing will make its way into your house, think about the woke movement. Think about how that surely could not have made its way into your house, and now you don't even know how to get your kid back. You don't even know what to say to your son or your daughter who has been lost after going to some college campus and coming back as somebody entirely different. You don't know how to deal. You don't know what to say. You're walking on eggshells. You done had a multitude of arguments. Maybe they've cut you out of their lives. And that came as a direct result of us going, you know what? It's not really my problem. Pronouns, okay. Come on, these guys are ridiculous, right? We let the ideas take root. We let the ideas germinate. We let the ideas become mainstream. And now here we are, feeling like sitting ducks in your own country. Jihad is on its way. Islam is on its way, and they are on a full push, folks. I used to hear folks talking like this back in the day. I used to think, oh man, look at these crazy conspiracy. And there's still a lot of conspiracy nut jobs out there. That's real. You know, this folks straight up psychosis. It's just, they're saying things just to say them. And usually it'll just lead to a Jew. That's how you usually know, right? No sort of actual rational thinking, no evidence, nothing presented in that measure. But what I'm talking about is right in front of y'all, right? Like, I mean, he put on him, look, he marked himself as property of what? He told you why he did it. Yeah, but y'all didn't want to listen to the story about Sarah and Yadon, huh? Y'all didn't want that. Y'all didn't want to stick on the story of two American citizens who were executed in public, two young people, 26 and 30 years old, who were executed by one of these quote unquote free Palestine nut jobs, took their lives in cold blood because he believed that they were Jews. We don't want to stick to those stories and to delve into those stories and to feel those stories because, well, that's not our problem until it becomes your personal problem. That's somebody's daughter. That's somebody's son, somebody's husband, wife, maybe grandparent that just lost their lives at the hand of a jihadist in Austin, Texas. How many people's loved ones on September the 11th, 2001, how many? How many loved ones are around today who continuously, year after year, have a memorial for the one that they lost to the hands of jihadists? And as Americans, as opposed to keeping our promise of remembering, never forgetting, we forgot. We were so occupied with the things to get. We were so concerned with today's temporary fixations and pleasures that we put no sort of emphasis or effort into our civil duties. We forgot. And now here we are. We forgot our God, and now here we are at the hands of a foreign God who looks to destroy all of this. So pray for those families who have lost their loved ones. As of the most recent reporting, let me see if I can get a number. Austin, Texas. How many? So yeah, 2 lost their lives, and At least 14 have been wounded. For nothing, folks. For absolutely nothing. This ain't the first, and it will not be the last. And if we're not doing something right now when we have this window, and I'm talking about like the slimmest window, right now is the slimmest window because the midterms are coming up and there is a whole entire sabotage campaign that is going to be unleashed onto the masses like nothing we have seen thus far. Nothing we've seen that we already see again on the so-called conservative side. Don't vote, or vote for Democrats. The same Democrats who are going to let these people flood in. They're going to cut all funding to DHS. ICE is going to lose its funding. They're going to make sure to park everything that would stop this from happening again and again and again, and instead enable it because they would rather see the entire place burn down so they can rule over those ashes than they would protect their own citizens. So pray for the families. I pray for y'all families that y'all are safe out there. You just never know. You know, cells could be activated at any point, at any given time. It does not take many. How many did it take on September the 11th? How many did it take? Right? Ask the folks on October 7th, how many did it take? How many would it take? Not but a few. So again, intercessory prayer. For my prayer warriors, intercede. Pray, pray, pray. For my politicians, pray and politic. Pray and legislate. Push, push, push. I know we have a low collective right now. Who's a part of it? I know we have Chip Roy. I know we have Randy Fine in there. I think we might have a Ted Cruz. There's a coalition who came together and they said no to jihad. They're saying no to this thing. We need that coalition within our politics who care enough about their own citizens to do something about this. And for the rest of us who can do something about it physically, start in your own homes, educate yourselves, make sure that your kids are aware about what's going on. And most importantly, be rooted in your faith, because if you're not, then another one will make its way in. I guarantee it. Yeah. If you ain't got a God over your home, there's going to be a God that is going to make its way in. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace.
Who are you praying to? In quiet times, the one you are relent to. When seeking higher guidance, hard to mind or where to. Who are you praying to? Is a God or image? Who's that one to find your limit?